Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Cassie Hopkins, and I help run the webinars here at Houseman Group. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Mental Health First Aid Training in the Workplace. We are so thankful to have Dan Muxfeld here with us today, and I just have a few things that I'm going to go over before he gets started. I would like to let everyone know that this webinar is recorded, and everyone who registers will receive a copy of the slides as well as a link to the recording of the entire presentation. At the end, we will have a question and answer session with Dan. It'll take about 10-15 minutes, so if you have a question that you think of while you're waiting for the Q&A, you can actually type it into the chat feature, and we will answer it at the end of the presentation. There are also HRCI and SHRM credits for today's presentation for 1 credit each. If you are interested in those, they will be in the PDF of the copy of the presentation slides that are going to be emailed out to you. And if you're just interested in learning more about our events and webinars in general, you can follow us on LinkedIn, and that should give you a very up-to-date schedule of what we've got planned out. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Dan Muxfeld. Dan has taught adult and youth mental health first aid training since 2015. Since then, he has led over 300 mental health first aid trainings. Dan has taught a wide variety of audiences, including school, government, business, and nonprofit organizations. Dan brings energy, enthusiasm, and humor to the classroom. He is one of the highest ranked trainers in the state of Wisconsin. He was awarded the top mental health first aid instructor for Wisconsin in 2021 by Mental Health First Aid USA and the National Council for Mental Health Wellbeing. This honor would not be possible without the commitment for so many individuals and organizations who support mental health first aid training throughout Madison, Dane County, and Wisconsin. Thank you so much, Dan. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you very much, Cassie. I'm delighted to be here. I haven't been on a webinar quite like this for a while. And the reason I'm just saying that it's going to be a little different for me is that I'm very used to, in Zoom trainings that we do for mental health first aid, seeing everybody and getting them to interact. So it's a little bit different, but we'll probably catch up on all the things that I would have interacted with you at during the Q&A session. So this is going to be a pretty straightforward lecture, and we'll go through and we'll use the PowerPoints. Now, mental health first aid was started back in the year 2000, actually got its origins in Australia. It has now been more than 35 countries across the world are having courses in mental health first aid. And the United States got this training originally in 2006. And since then, we have certified more than 3,100,000 mental health first aiders. And it's very, very important to have these folks. And because they are really kind of our boots on the ground in a sense. Our first aiders are the people who start to notice things in another's appearance, behavior, thoughts, and feelings that might indicate that they are struggling with a mental health or substance use disorder. So let me get moving. I want to share my screen with you. And we are set. So once again, welcome to Mental Health First Aid Training. Thanks again to Cassie and to Houseman Group Insurance. So my icebreaker was going to be kind of interactive. I was hoping to get some back and forth between members of who are attending this webinar. And the reason why is that by and large, people don't attend a session as an overview of mental health first aid for the most part, unless they've been seeing something, whether they are seeing changes in their colleagues at work or family members or neighbors, or people in volunteer organizations that they see on a regular basis. They're generally seeing something. And while mental health first aiders do not diagnose or treat a mental health disorder, they are able to notice things. And the things they notice are changes in a person's appearance, behavior, feelings, and thoughts. And as we go through this webinar, we will spend some time taking a look at what those signs and symptoms really look like in the workplace and elsewhere in the community. So, big question as to what you are seeing. If any of you want to, as you do the Q&A chat for later in the presentation, if you want to let Cassie know what kind of things you're seeing in the workplace, that would be interesting. And I think it'd be interesting for your colleagues on the training as well. So I guess the whole point of this particular slide is simply to acknowledge the fact that mental health disorders are common. And as you read through this, you probably will get a sense that it is far more likely that you'll encounter a person who's experiencing the signs and symptoms of a mental health disorder or a substance use disorder than practically any other kind of serious illnesses. Now, a couple of things I wanted to add to this slide at the end that I think would be interesting for you. About half of all mental health and substance use disorders start by the age of 14, and about 3/4 of them by age 24. So by the time you're seeing some people in the workplace, they may very well be struggling with a mental health or substance use disorder. And the early onset of mental health disorders is rising very quickly. Cassie mentioned that I was doing this training originally starting in around 2015. At that time, the median age for the onset of anxiety was age 12. Today, the median age for the onset of anxiety disorders is 6. So we are seeing many, many more people much earlier in their life cycle, who are struggling with the challenges associated with a mental health or substance use disorder. So the fact that mental health disorders are common is really important for you to get a sense of. These disorders have serious impacts for both employer and employee. And even though I have several points here, this is not a comprehensive list of all of the impacts that struggling or living with a mental health disorder can bring. So, worst case scenario are the ones further down: unemployment, self-medicating with substance abuse, becoming unhoused. Rates of suicide have been going up exponentially, and overall poor quality of life. It is a struggle when people are really trying to live with even the more common mental health disorders, such as depression or anxiety. So these are some of the consequences that can happen to an employee. And here are some things that are of note or that you should think about as the impact of mental health disorders on the employer. There is all kinds of productivity that is lost when someone is struggling with a mental health disorder. Now, the things that we cite here in this particular slide have a lot to do with the experience with depression. Depression is common, but anxiety is even more common. But if you look, I think there's something like 280 work days in a year. And if you look at this, you're losing probably better than 1/4 of work days for someone who is struggling with an untreated depressive disorder. So that's serious, very, very serious productivity losses, but it really has an impact on everyone who works in your company or anyone that has direct responsibility or colleague or whatever with the person who is struggling with a mental health challenge. People aren't always on the same page. They may find it difficult to relate to others or to understand differing perspectives. And this, of course, can lead to hostility and misunderstanding in the workplace. So the impact of a depressive disorder, for example, is not just on the person who's struggling with it. It impacts the other coworkers and certainly other people in that person's life who is struggling with, in this case, a depressive disorder. Here's some other things that kind of give a little more a broad-based view rather than just talking about depression. But the economic impact, and this is the macro kind of numbers, serious mental illnesses on the public, $300 billion a year in lost productivity. The next bullet point talks a lot about, it was really relating to lost productivity from mental health or substance use disorders on a global basis. And as you can see, in a matter of 30 years, it will be 2.5 times that it was, 20 years, 2.5 times that it was in the year 2010. So the way these numbers were tracked was due to absenteeism, turnover, and increased medical and disability expenses. So addressing mental health disorders in the workplace can be incredibly helpful for your team, for your staff, for the people that are in your company. But it can also make a difference in that person's life, that employee's life, not just at work, but in every aspect of their life. I'm putting this slide in only because over the time when COVID was most prevalent, starting back in the first quarter of 2020, before the vaccines and so on were out, practically every training I did, and of course all the trainings were virtual trainings back in those days. We are doing in-person trainings now as well as virtual trainings. But the question is, what do you think the impact is of COVID? And what Mental Health First Aid did here, along with this is information from the Council of State Governments, is they just noted the things that had changed during COVID that might impact someone's mental health. And so when they were measuring this prior to COVID, about 1 in 10 people were, stressed or anxious. And now it is 4 in 10 people that have, have signs and symptoms of a depressive disorder. So I want to move on. This is kind of the overview from 20,000 feet that we've talked about so far. So I'd like to get a little bit more specific. And this is what's happened during my time as a mental health first aider. 2021, we had 48,000 plus suicides in the United States, and it doesn't seem to be slowing anytime soon. We could talk, we'll talk a little bit later about suicidal thoughts and behavior in this presentation. So what is mental health first aid? The key things to keep in mind about mental health first aid are really 2 things. One is that we want to improve our noticing skills. We want people to notice changes in friends, colleagues, family members, whatever the case. We want them to notice changes in their appearance, behavior, feelings, and thoughts. And to, once noticing these things, take the step to engage that person and ultimately guide them to appropriate professional help in the community. And we'll talk a little bit about, spent quite a bit of time talking about it in the actual training as to where those resources are and who can help early on. So mental health first aid, notice changes, and then connect someone with the appropriate support that can help them with their recovery. By the way, this may not be a fact that you're familiar with now, but recovery from a mental health disorder, once they have been connected to a therapist, counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist, etc., is better than 90%. People achieve significant levels of recovery with the support of mental health professionals. So where does mental health first aid fit in? It is ideally seen as an early intervention. I'll probably mention this a couple times during the course of the training or the presentation today, but the sooner someone with a mental health disorder receives support from a mental health or medical professional, the greater likelihood of their recovery is, and the recovery is easier and more complete. In that regard, mental health disorders are no different than any other serious illness. The sooner somebody gets help, the better the outcome is for the person. So we put a lot of focus in noticing, particularly early signs and symptoms of a mental health disorder. Now, here's some of the things we'll be talking about for the next few minutes, talking about things that participants in mental health first aid training learn. We'll talk about risk factors and warning signs for mental health and substance use challenges. These are important because they, along with the things that we see, really can help us get a good sense as to the changes that someone is experiencing when they're at the onset point of a mental health or substance use disorder. We provide information on a variety of mental health and substance use challenges. I should point out, if I haven't already, mental health first aiders do not diagnose or treat mental health disorders. What they do is they notice changes and ultimately connect the people they're concerned about to appropriate professional help. But in doing so, we provide a really wonderful leave behind, which is a 280-page evidence-based document on mental health challenges in the United States, a specific variety of mental health disorders and substance use disorders. And then we also have a excellent section on helping someone who is experiencing a mental health crisis. So that's what we do with our noticing. And then we have the 5-step mental health first aid ALGE action plan that once you've noticed changes, you can use to guide someone to professional peer self-help resources. So these are some of the things that mental health first aiders would pick up in a training. So after noticing, what we do is we give folks a plan, if you will, a strategy to, when you've noticed changes in someone, to engage them and ultimately try to connect them with the right kind of people that can help in recovery. So they are the ALGE, ALGE action plan is named that way because of the first letter in each of the steps of the mental health first aid action plan. But we put one of the A steps or one of the A words right in the center of all of this. And the reason why is that as mental health first aiders, big part of what we do is notice, and we really want everyone as a first aider to continually assess for risk of suicide or harm with anyone that they have noticed changes in. So really focus on that both in non-crisis and crisis situations. So here's the first step: either assess for risk of suicide or harm, or how to approach someone that you've noticed changes in. And that we practice, we do exercises on both the approach and assess step. And in doing so, we give people an idea as to the variety of different ways that people can approach someone. Now, the second step is listen non-judgmentally. It's the shortest step, but it is probably the most difficult to do. Really, really listening and paying attention and focus is really critical as you're in your role as a mental health first aider. And Mental Health First Aid USA acknowledges the fact that listening is difficult. So listening and then suspending judgment. Being non-judgmental is hard to do too. I mean, we really have to focus on that, because you consider how we live our lives, how we work in our workplaces, is that we are constantly taking in information and evaluating it and making judgments based on that evaluation. In mental health first aid, we just want you to listen, because we don't actually provide treatment. We need to know and understand what's going on with someone we're concerned about, so we can help guide them to the right resource. Giving reassurance and information. It would take a lot longer than the hour we're going to have together to just categorize all of the misinformation that there is about mental health and substance use disorders, not only in the workplace, but at home, at school, and pretty much any place else that we would inhabit. So what mental health first aid does in this step is give reassurance and accurate information. The reassurance helps people overcome any fears or hesitancy they might have about seeking help for a mental health disorder. And the additional information that we provide gives people a sense that they don't have to fear what might come when they engage with a counselor, therapist, physician, psychologist, psychiatrist, etc. Then we take time talking about who those resources are. Who can they connect with? We're really fortunate in at least the Madison area and southern Wisconsin that we have a lot of people, a lot of mental health professionals who are trained to help folks struggling with a mental health or substance use disorder, help them recover, and recover in a way that can be very effective and change, make a significant change in their life. So we ultimately would like to get people to a professional. And then the second E, it's also encourage, but we talk about encouraging self-help and other support strategies. And self-help really comes in a variety of different forms. It can be everything from exercise to meditation to volunteer activities. It's really as varied and diverse as people's interests. And I think all of us probably do some self-help things for ourselves every day. But often people that are struggling with a mental health or substance use challenge lose sight of the things that they can do for themselves that would help them cope and recover from a mental health challenge. So these are the 5 steps of the mental health first aid action plan. And in the training, we work with scenarios to get a sense as to how to use the steps. And then we also watch a handful of videos where we're given the opportunity to observe, not only to notice changes in someone, but to observe how the people in the video actually use mental health first aid. So really want to, again, focus on the idea that early intervention for a mental health disorder can be amazingly effective. The sooner somebody gets help, gets connected to mental health or substance use professionals, the more likely and the more complete their recovery will be. To put it more succinctly, early intervention improves outcomes. So, what is early intervention? Well, it's noticing those signs early and connecting them to a mental health professional before signs and symptoms worsen. Early intervention also helps prevent symptoms from becoming more serious and kind of helps alter the impact of the secondary effects of a mental health challenge. And these aren't other mental health disorders or other illnesses. These really kind of fall into the category of what people think of as significant life losses, things that can happen to you on a big scale that may result largely from having an untreated mental health or substance use disorder. So let's take a look at what mental health first aid says. Untreated mental health disorders can lead to job losses, and they can certainly lead to school dropouts, kind of the flip side of the same coin. It's really hard to work effectively in a work setting when you are struggling with a progressing mental health disorder. It's very hard to stay in school, particularly post-high school education, because you have a lot more responsibilities. Things aren't as uniformly scheduled. So it makes it very, very difficult for people with a mental health struggle to really adapt to school situations. Other things can happen. Relationship breakups might be a divorce, might be friendships, might be any number of things that can have a mental health challenge as a underlying cause. Arrests or problems with the law. As mental health disorders worsen, as they progress, people's behavior can become somewhat odd or erratic. And that's the kind of behavior that can really get people's notice. Might not just get law enforcement's notice, it might get just someone who calls law enforcement and says, I have a person nearby here who is behaving in a very odd or erratic manner. Can you come and check on him? Well, that sometimes leads to arrests, or sometimes on the positive side of this, it might lead to someone's entrance into the mental health system. And I know that in Madison, the police in all of Dane County work closely with Madison's Community Mental Health Center, known as Journey Mental Health Center. They work closely with them for trying to get people preferably in the mental health system as opposed to the judicial system. And then about 1/3 of people with an untreated mental health disorder experience a co-occurring drug or alcohol challenge. What's basically going on here is self-medication. And it can even feel effective for a little bit. But in the long haul, alcohol and drugs are not an effective, it's not an effective treatment for a mental health or substance use disorder. So let's take a look at what some of these things look like. What are early signs and symptoms? We talked about them in the terms of behavior, appearance, feelings, and thoughts. Now, the ones that I'm going to be showing here are not a comprehensive list of all the signs and symptoms that might occur when someone is struggling with a mental health disorder. But what these are probably the most common that you might run into both in the workplace and in other parts of your life. So changes in behavior. Let's say you have a colleague that once they make a commitment to be somewhere and to do whatever it is that they're expected, when you start seeing people showing up late or canceling, or maybe not showing up at all, that's something that is a big change, something that you might want to pay attention to. Appearance, tired, disheveled, and unkempt. I really like the word unkempt. I think it's just so descriptive. So these are changes in appearance. And this is with someone whose personal hygiene is really top-notch, who always wears clean clothing, relatively wrinkle-free, and really kind of takes pride in their appearance. So when you see changes there, something that you want to pay attention to. Changes in feelings, no longer enjoying work, activities, or hobbies. If you see somebody, if you've got somebody in your life that is really, really interested in a specific type of hobby, in the trainings, I've had quite a wide variety of activities or hobbies that people are really engaged in. I mean, these folks are reading about their hobby, they're going online to find information about their hobby, they go fishing or knitting or whatever it is they do every chance they get, and they will talk to people about their hobby until the other person's eyes glaze over. That's really being engaged in a hobby or work activity. And when this changes, when people disengage, that's when you need to start paying attention. That's an early sign of change in feelings. And then, of course, increased sadness or worry. I should point out that everyone has days when they are down. That is perfectly normal. But when you have a week or two or three where you are continuously feeling sad, that's something that you need to pay attention to. Or anxious. I mean, we're all anxious at different times, and it's not unusual to do so. Trying something new can be anxiety producing. There are many things that can give us worry, but they generally are relatively short periods of time. When you have somebody who is worrying for lengthy periods of time, you really want to pay attention to that. So, and then thoughts, difficulty concentrating or focusing at home, school, or work. Indecisiveness. As a mental health disorder progresses, what you'll notice is that it might become increasingly difficult for you to communicate with the person that you're concerned about. They may just have a hard time concentrating and focusing on their conversations with you. So these are what early signs and symptoms look like. And as I manage my time, I want to make sure that I do leave adequate time for the end. So I'm going to slip by one video. I'll show you another video in the training in just a few minutes. So also talk about worsening signs and symptoms. These are definite situations that you would look at where an illness has progressed. No longer just showing up late, they're actively withdrawing from people. Here's your odd or erratic behavior. Significant decline in personal hygiene. Sadness, hopelessness, despair, worry, anger, or rage. What happens, particularly in worsening signs and symptoms, is that the duration of feeling sad, hopeless, worry, anger, or enraged, it lasts longer. And the frequency, how many times it happens, keeps increasing. And then the impact that the anger, worry, rage, hopelessness, etc., has on the person you're concerned about and other people also gets significantly worse. So these are definitely signs that a mental health disorder, whatever the underlying disorder is getting worse. Fortunately, we don't have to diagnose or treat worsening signs and symptoms. We just have to notice them and really try to get someone connected to appropriate professional help. So I'm going to talk now a little bit about mental health crises. This is what we spend about half of the training on. And we want people to notice and to know when things have become a crisis or could become a crisis. So we define what a mental health crisis is as a time of intense difficulty, trouble, danger, or distress. And intense difficulty, trouble, danger, or distress is much more noticeable than, say, the early signs and symptoms of a mental health disorder are. And of course, this danger, difficulty, trouble, danger, or distress can manifest itself in a variety of ways, emotionally, mentally, physically, and so on. So in a crisis situation, what we want the mental health first aider to know is that their job, number one, is to keep people safe. Whatever it is that you do or whatever it is that you need to do to keep the person that you're concerned about safe, others who are in the immediate vicinity safe, and of course, yourself safe is vital in a crisis situation. And then we talk in terms of trying to de-escalate a situation that has become a crisis. So let's talk about de-escalating a situation. We do a couple of different exercises with this so people get a real sense and opportunity to practice de-escalation, not only with our scenarios, but in other parts of the training. But here is what mental health first aid just sees as an effective strategy for de-escalating a situation. As you're reading down these PowerPoint bullets, I can summarize this for you in one simple phrase, and that is this: model the behavior you would like to see. Model the behavior you would like to see. If someone is angry, is aggressive, stepping into your space, is being disruptive, they're being aggressive, modeling the behavior you'd like to see can be very effective. I was doing a training probably about 3 weeks ago with a group of property management people. These are folks that run into particularly serious mental health disorders more often than my average class does. And modeling the behavior you'd like to see is what they say will work 9 times out of 10. And that was from people who use it effectively. So model the behavior you would like to see. Now, in the course of the training, we talk about several different kinds of crisis situations. The column on your left is are situations that may become a crisis, and the column on the right is what we talk about for immediate mental health crises. I want to talk a little bit about panic attack because I'm going to show a brief video here. People who have experienced panic attacks or seen panic attacks know that some of the things are very important. There's like heart racing, mind going blank, perspiration, incredible sense of fear, heart palpitations, just a variety of things. So we talk about those signs and symptoms, and then we use this strategy to help engage someone who's experiencing a panic attack. So good thing if you don't know the person who is experiencing a panic attack, by all means introduce yourself. In my experiences engaging someone with a panic attack, I don't just walk up and say, "Are you having a panic attack?" even though they may be showing all the signs and symptoms of one. But what I'm more likely to do is simply say, "You appear to be in a great deal of distress. Do you know what's happening to you?" And one occasion, they knew they were having a panic attack, and they just wanted to get someplace quiet. If someone doesn't know they're having a panic attack, it may feel like they're having a heart attack. It may feel like they are having a reaction to an allergy. There may be a number of things, and if there's no way to determine it, we strongly recommend that people call 911 and get immediate medical help on the way. The good news may be that when the EMTs show up, they'll note that you are having a panic attack. So that's kind of one of the ways that mental health first aid teaches our folks to handle a different kind of crisis. And there's amazing amount of information in the book, in the back of our participant manual for helping in these situations. I'm going to play this video, and normally at the end of the video, I ask 2 questions. Number 1 is, what did you notice going on with the woman who was experiencing a panic attack? So we get a chance to notice signs and symptoms. And the other part is, does the mental health first aider do an effective job? So let me get this going. Whoops. I'm sorry, I need to stop sharing before I do this. Sorry, I'm having a little problem getting to my video. Well, I'm going to go back and just run it on this. It may be a little jumpy because it's playing off of the PowerPoint. So let's go this way and hopefully it's be all right.
Hey, Dan, we're not able to hear the video.
Hold on. Pardon me. Let me try it now.
A while, I was diagnosed by my doctor with generalized anxiety disorder. He used to not think that was a thing. I should be able to control it. Should man up, figure it out myself, that type of thing. I got lucky. Found a great therapist. Even found some medication that, to my surprise, actually helped. So I was fortunate enough to find some relief. All right, well, that was me. I'd love to hear some of your stories. I get it. Not like I'm asking a group of people with anxiety to come out here and talk in front of a room full of strangers out loud about their anxiety, but that's what we're here to do, right? Anybody?
Okay, I'll go. Hey, my name is Jenny. I have panic attacks. Generally, I can get through my day, but sometimes the stress just builds and I have a panic attack. I started a new job a few months ago, my first office job. I've just since then been really, really scared about losing it and about not working hard enough or I don't know, just being good enough. I remember this one night I went out with my friends for drinks.
Right? And we're nervous.
Hey, Jenny, we have to make some final tweaks to the presentation.
People find it to turn off, and finally it does. We're just like pushing people out of their house just so we can get through, right?
Only have 45 minutes to connect.
Only 45 minutes to connect. We're running, we're like tearing through the terminal, right? And then so I got my.
I knew it was a mistake to leave. Why did I leave? I would have finished the report by now. If I hadn't left, I'm never gonna get it done. I'm
Tripping over stuff and like it's crazy.
go in tomorrow and mess up the presentation. I know I'm gonna mess it up, and then they're gonna call me in the next day. They're gonna fire me. I'm so stupid. Why did I do this to myself? I always do this to myself. I don't know what I'm doing. go home and I'm gonna talk to Liz. And tell her that I lost my job, and she's gonna be disappointed in me. She's gonna be even more disappointed in me. She's gonna break up with me. She's not gonna love me anymore, and she shouldn't love me. I'm gonna be alone and be without a job and be without Liz, and I'm gonna die alone.
It is chilly out here. You okay?
Like I can't breathe, and that my throat's closing up.
Okay, has this happened to you before?
I had panic attacks a few years back.
Okay, do you want to be alone? Do you want me to stay here? So what do you think started this?
My presentation tomorrow. I think maybe that
Okay, and what thoughts are you having about that right now?
I'm gonna mess it up, or that I don't know, I'm gonna lose my job, end up alone.
No matter what happens on your presentation tomorrow, even if it's the worst thing in the world, we're gonna figure out a way through this, okay? Has anything helped you in the past with this?
Breathing.
Okay, great. Let's breathe.
Okay.
Let's breathe together. Here you go. I'm here with you. I'm gonna be right here with you the entire way. Oh, good. See, just keep breathing.
That was the moment that I decided to see a psychologist, and she diagnosed me with panic disorder. And I guess just the idea of breaking the cycle and realizing that all those feelings are just temporary, that has really helped me.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay, so normally at the end of that video, we talk about what people noticed with Jenny when she was outside experiencing a panic attack, and then what the helper did as a mental health first aider did that was effective. So through a series of exercises and videos, we don't just talk about effective mental health first aid or how it can be used. We do our best to give the people in the class opportunities to practice it and to really get a kind of a hands-on feel for how to engage someone that we've noticed changes in. We're getting pretty close to the end of time here, so I'm going to just end with this particular other one that we're concerned about. And aggressive behaviors. There is a big difference between violence and aggression. As a matter of fact, mental health first aid tells us that only about 4% of violent crime is committed by people with mental health challenges. But other things, aggressive behaviors are quite common. They fall short of violence. They don't have the physical harm part of it, but stepping into your space, yelling, gesturing, being angry. These are all things that we've experienced, and mental health first aid would say that if you're experiencing that directed to you, that you should try to de-escalate the situation. In other words, model the behavior that you would like to see. Now I'm going to skip ahead here. So I do want to leave time for us to do Q&A. I'm guessing a lot of you people are SURE members or HR professionals. This is not going to be a new list of bullet points for you. This is something that comes from really a lot of different resources. But some of the key points, if we could normalize the idea of mental health services and that it was okay to get them, we could reduce the stigma significantly, and people would be far more likely to get services early. So that's just one part of culture. What do the trainings involve? We have a couple hours of pre-work We do 6 hours of interactive in-person instruction. That can be either done virtually or it can be done in person. Have practice using the mental health first aid action plan and final knowledge check. The certification as a mental health first aider is a 3-year certification and is renewable. So, and the big thing we leave behind is the participant manual. Cassie, at this point, I'd like to do questions and answers.
All right. So at this time, if you would like to ask Dan a question about anything he's gone over, you are welcome to do so using the chat or the Q&A feature. Give it a couple minutes for people to type in. All right, first question came in. What should you do if someone is having an episode that could turn violent in the workplace? How do I keep others safe while also helping the person?
Well, number one is you get all the others away from where you are. If you think that someone is behaving aggressively and it could turn into violence, you want to get everybody else as far away as possible. And then in mental health first aid, if you don't have resources within your building or business, we strongly recommend that you pick up the phone and call 911 and describe what you are seeing. It's very important not to diagnose it or treat it, but just tell someone. And the dispatchers at 911 are quite adept at trying to get the right information so they get the kind of right response set. But maintaining safety is job one for a mental health first aider in a crisis.
Great answer. Next one is, if we are interested in getting certified, what are the next steps?
Well, the next steps would be, here's my commercial for Houseman Group. Houseman Group has pretty much gone all in on mental health first aid training, and that's why that's why I'm here doing these presentations and have had the good fortune to do trainings with a lot of different clients. Next step is usually contacting, and Cassie, you can jump in here at any moment, but either I'm going to use the wrong term, I would call sales representative, or what do they really call?
Consultants.
Consultants.
Yeah, or agent.
Talk to your contact. Yeah. Talk to your consultant or contact at Houseman Group. Tell them that you're interested, and from there, we can work out to get a time and so on set up when we could work with your group or organization.
Yes, and since the people who have stayed for the whole presentation, you actually do get some exclusive information. So we are doing a fall mental health first aid training in September, and we are going to send that link out to only the people who have been on this webinar today. So it is not officially open to everyone that we advertise these classes to. So if you are interested, you can sign up early, and that will give you an opportunity to get certified in this class. And I actually just saw someone come up with a Q&A. How long are you certified for? Is it yearly?
It's a 3-year certification, and the renewals have been done in a 1-hour online process. So they'll let you know when your certification is about to expire, and then they will reach out to you and say, here is an option for renewing your certification.
Awesome. Any more questions? All right, I don't see anything coming through, but if you think of something after this presentation has ended, you're welcome to email me, and we will also have Dan's contact information on the follow-up email that will have the slides, the recording, as well as a link if you are interested in signing up to take the full class. Thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you for listening to this really important and really timely webinar. And thank you so much to Dan for giving us your expertise and having such a lovely partnership with Mental Health First Aid. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. And we would really appreciate if you just take that survey really quick at the end, and otherwise have a great rest of your day. Thank you.